In the early morning of the small village, the smoke had not yet dissipated. Ma Chao carried a bundle of firewood down the mountain, sweating profusely, and his clothes were torn like beggars. He is just over 18 this year and is pretty solid, but there is always a dissatisfied look in his eyes. The small village is called Haishi Village, which is so damn that the villagers have to be like dogs and worship the gangsters in the temple. Every year, people are exhausted by harsh taxes. If they cannot get paid, they have to be whipped. They are even caught and become coolies, and they are exhausted. Chozi, why have you been back long ago? Old Wang from the entrance of the village was smoking a drought smoke. He looked at Ma Chao's face exhausted and couldn't help asking. I'm not afraid that my mother will be anxious. Ma Chao grinned and weighed the firewood on his shoulders. I still have to go to the town to sell some things and change some food, otherwise I will have to eat it again. Lao Wang was shaking his head and said, when is this day? The temple is helping dogs, and the taxes are rising every year. Where can we bear this small broken village? I heard that someone in the next village could not pay it, so I was directly captured by the envoy of God. Now there are no more movies. Ma Chao heard it, his face darkened, and he didn't answer, and his pace accelerated. His heart looked like a bright mirror. The temple was a vampire. No matter how hard the mortals slammed, they could not escape the palm of their hands. But he doesn't believe in fate, he always thinks that one day he can smash this broken day. When he got home, Ma Chao put down the firewood and heard the sound of his mother crying in the yard. He felt nervous and rushed in and saw 3 messengers in white robes standing in the yard, with the flesh on his head full of flesh, holding an iron whip in his hand, pointing at his mother's wand. You old thing, dare you to drag the taxes? Believe it or not, I will drag you to the temple now, making you kneel to death. The god envoy's face was impatient, and the iron whip blew on the ground with a slap and a dusty dust was raised. Ma Chao's mother was trembling in surprise and knelt on the ground and begged for a favor, Sir, please limit it to a few days. The baby is really gone. His father was arrested as a coolie last year. He has not come back yet. I am just relying on my son to carry him home. Stop talking. The god envoy sneered, raised his foot and kicked it. Ma Chao Nyang fell to the ground, covering her stomach and moaning. When Ma Chao entered the door, he happened to see the scene, and his brain exploded with a buzz. He rushed over and helped his mother up, stared at the messenger tightly, gritting his teeth and said, Dare you dare to move my mother? Yeah, are you pretty good? The leader of the god envoy was happy, looking up and down at Ma Chao, as if looking at a thorn. What, do you want to rebel? Tell you, I represent the temple, and you are giving your mother your face. Let me stop, and you will be taken away together. Ma Chao clenched his fists and his chest seemed to be burning. He knows the power of the messengers, who in the village is not afraid of them. But looking at the slight on his mother's face, the fire in his heart could not be suppressed. Kneel down and knock on your head and think you're wrong. I may be able to kill you. The god envoy sneered, and the iron whip shook in his hand. The 2 followers next to him also started to cheer, looking at the hot face. Kneel down and you're so big. Ma Chao roared suddenly, his eyes red. He didn't know where the courage came from, so he punched the messenger's face. Looking for death. The god empress did not expect that this boy would really dare to take action, and he whipped it with a blow. But at this moment, Ma Chao suddenly sounded in his brain, as if something had exploded, and a heat flowed from his heart and mouth to his whole body. There was a red light flashing on his fist, which was so fast that it hit the god's chest with one punch. Bang! With a whisper, the god sent the whole person to fly out and smashed it on the yard wall. A mouthful of blood was sprayed out of his mouth, and his face was filled with disbelief. The 2 followers next to them were stunned and had no reaction for a long time. Ma Chao himself was also confused. He looked down at his fist, his heart beating like a drumbeat. What was that power just now? What's going on? He obviously hasn't practiced much skill. There was a circle of villagers around the outside of the yard, and they were still watching it hot, so I was stunned. The drought smoke in Lao Wang's mouth fell off, and he tied up, Choice, why why did you beat the god envoy? Ma Chao didn't take care of them for a while, so he helped his mother up. He didn't have any serious injuries to see her, so he relaxed. But the messenger got up and pointed at Ma Chao with a resentful face. Okay, you are such a little boy. You dare to take action against the people in the temple, you are alive, right? Wait, I will go back and sue you, and I will make your whole family die without a burial place. After saying that, he covered his chest and walked away with 2 followers. He left immediately and said ruthlessly, "You remember it for me, this matter is not over." The villagers then started to discuss it. I'm so worried about Chaozi. How can the people in the temple be easy to mess with? But what happened to his fist just now? It's like a person. Oh, this child is very enthusiastic, but this time it's really over. Ma Chao heard these words and felt a group in his heart. He knew he had lost his worries, but he did not regret it. Mom is his only wife. Who dares to move, who will fight with him? But, what exactly is that power? He looked down at his hand, believing that there was something wrong with him. It's all gone, don't surround me. The sound of an old man suddenly rose. When the villagers looked back, they found that it was an old man in a gray robe, with a crutch and a full face, with a breath that could not be described. Old Mr. Xia, why are you here? Old Wang rushed forward. The old man called Xia Roland. He didn't leave the door very much. He heard that he knew some strange things, and everyone in the village respected him very much. Thanks to Roland, Lao Wang walked straight to Ma Chao, looked him up and down for a while, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Boy, come with me, I have something to tell you. Ma Chao was stunned. Seeing the old man's eyes were sincere, he didn't think much about it. He helped his mother back to the house, told her to have a good rest, and then followed Xia Roland to the remote forest outside the village. Old, why are you looking for me to fuck me? Ma Chao was a little impatient. Thank you, Roland was not in a hurry to open his mouth, but took out a black stone from it and sent it to Ma Chao. Hold it, close your eyes and feel it. Ma Chao asked with his face, but he still did it. Just holding the stone, his brain was shocked again, and the heat surged into his heart again, even more fierce than before. He suddenly opened his eyes and found that there was a red light flowing on the stone. What's this? Ma Chao was shocked, his voice trembled a little. Thank you, Roland, with deep eyes, this is a war soul stone, which can awaken the ancient blood in your body. Ma Chao, you are not an ordinary person, you are a destiny hero, and you must challenge the existence of the gods. What? A fateful hero? Ma Chao was confused, thinking that the old man was probably weak. Don't joke with me, I'm just a chopper, so what kind of hero's life is there? Join? Thank you, Roland snorted coldly, you just punched the god envoy. Isn't it a proof of blood awakening? Tell you, the god has long been eyeing you. Do you think they will let someone out who can threaten their rule? If you don't leave now, when their army comes, you and your mother will die. Ma Chao's heart sank. Although he was still half believing and half doubted, the old man's words made him feel cold and disgusted. He remembered the ruthless words of the god's messenger just left, and his fists clenched again. Then what should I do? You can't sit and wait for death. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and asked. Thank you, Roland, with a low voice, the fighting spirit in your body has not yet awakened completely. If you want to survive and protect your family, you have to find a lost artifact to release your power in the end. The minions of the gods will come soon, and I will help you, but you must make a choice should you continue to be immortal, or stand up and fight against the will of heaven. Ma Chao was filled with excitement when he heard it. His brain was full of pictures of his mother being bullied, and he felt the inexplicable power. He took a deep breath and his eyes became calm. Old, I don't believe in fate, but I believe in myself. Tell me, what should I do? Thank you, Roland smiled, and a flash of relief in his eyes. Good boy, there is a kind. From now on, follow me. The first step is that we have to leave this broken village and find the first magical artifact, the Breaking Blade. It is hidden in the Soul Valley in the north, and it is not easy on the road. Are you ready? Ma Chao was a little bit, and a fire ignited in his heart. He didn't know how difficult the road ahead was, but he knew that from today on, he would not be lowered. What about the gods? If he dares to bully his family, he dares to poke a hole in the sky. Let's go, old man, don't be too slow. Ma Chao grinned and turned around and looked towards the village, his eyes full of determination. The night in Haishi village was so thick that it could not be melted. Ma Chao followed Ciarulan and quietly left the village and headed north at night. He felt a little panicked. He had never left the village so far, but when he thought of his mother's safety, and the ruthlessness of the messenger when he left, he clenched his teeth and said nothing, and followed the old man in his head. Boy, don't have a bitter melon on the face. There is an ancient forest ahead, and the rope of the spear of the sky is there. Ciarulan walked with a crutch, but every step was as stable as a mountain. The sound was filled with calmness in the old world. This forest is not a good place. There are not only wild animals, but also restrictions set by gods. If you are not careful, you have to give your order. You have to cheer up. Ma Chao curled his lips and carried a pack of dry food. He couldn't help but mutter, "Old, what exactly is the sky-breaking spear you said? Can it really make me hurt? Also, what kind of soul-fighting power in my body? How do you use it? I'm still confused now." Thank you. Roland glanced at him and snorted, "What's the hurry? The power of the soul cannot be understood overnight. Remember now. Don't be afraid when you are on the key. If you feel like you're going to fight, the blood will tell you what to do. As for the spear of the sky, it is the weapon of the ancient hero. It is said that it can break the gods' defenses. If a mortal takes it, you can compete with the gods. If you find it, your first step will be to go out." Ma Chao felt aroused in his heart, and clenched his fists. His brain was full of pictures of the flying messenger that day. He knew he was not ordinary, but he was really unsure of how extraordinary he was. But, no matter what, if the troops come, the water comes and the soil is covered, we will never let the temples helping things bully the dogs. The two of them walked for half a night and finally arrived at the edge of the ancient forest. The entrance to the forest is dark, the trees are so high that the branches are so dense that the moonlight cannot penetrate, and the air is filled with a sense of pressure that cannot be expressed. Ma Chao swallowed, feeling a little fluttering on his back neck. "Old man, what's wrong with this place? We really have to go in?" Ma Chao couldn't help asking. "Wind, how can I find a magic weapon if I don't go in? If I'm afraid, I'll go back and take your woodcutter." Ciarulan glared at him without any worries, and walked in first, knocking the crutch on the ground, making a dong-dong sound. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and followed with his head. The forest was so quiet that there were a few birds yelling, and they all sounded like ghost howling. He held a wooden stick in his hand and prepared to deal with sudden situations at any time. But after walking for a long time, nothing happened, which made him even more tight. "Old man, how big is this broken place? Why didn't you see anything?" Ma Chao wiped his sweat and couldn't help complaining. "Thank you." Roland was about to open her mouth when she suddenly stopped walking, her eyes sank, and she said in a low voice, "Close your mouth, someone is coming." Ma Chao was stunned. When he thought about what was going on, he heard a hurrying sound from the forest ahead. Then, more than a dozen figures wearing silver armor emerged from the darkness and surrounded their group. The guy in the head was tall, wearing a half-iron mask on his face, holding a long gun in his hand, and a cold light flashed on the tip of the gun, which seemed not easy to mess with. "Ma Chao, a little mess, it's really here." The iron mask sneered, and the sound was as sandy as a whetstone. "The temple had expected you to run away, so I specially sent my Luo to catch you. It's a pity that you dare to beat the envoy. It's a pity that your life is at its peak today." Ma Chao was nervous and stood in front of Ciarulan, gritting his teeth and saying, "Is it the shrine again? I will fight as much as I can." "Don't worry, just do it." Luo laughed, his face full of disdain, "Just like you, a boy in the country? Brothers, give it to me, capture this boy alive, and go back to Wen. Don't let it go, let it go together." As the voice fell, more than 10 magical leopards rushed over, and the sword came out, and the cold light was dazzling. Ma Chao's heart was beating fast, his palms were covered in sweat, but he did not retreat, and his brain was full of the feeling of fighting the god of flying that day. He yelled, held the wooden stick and went up to meet him. Bang! The first magic knife slashed over. Ma Chao instinctively flicked his instinct and smashed the wooden stick hard on the helmet, directly knocking the person to the ground, and his brain was dent. The other gods were stunned for a moment. Unexpectedly, this boy was so powerful. But Ma Chao didn't give them time to react. He hit the crowd and smashed it. Every move was filled with inexplicable power, and the stick was almost swung by him. This kid is weird, don't hold back and kill him. Roke saw that the opponent was not right, and Lima ordered, trembling his gun, and stabbed Ma Chao's chest with a broken voice. Seeing that Ma Chao couldn't hide, he suddenly sounded in his brain, and the familiar heat came out from his heart again. His eyes suddenly turned red, his muscles bulged, and even the wooden sticks in his hand were emitting red light. He suddenly turned his back, and his long gun rubbed his shoulders and brought out a blood mark, but he seemed to have no feeling, and he smashed the rock gun with his backhand. Crack! The wooden stick broke into 2 pieces, but Luoka's long gun was shocked and flew out, inserted into a big tree next to it, and the gun was buzzing. Roke's face changed drastically, and he took 2 steps back, and his face was full of disbelief. What power are you? Ma Chao was panting, and blood from his shoulders flowed down his arms, but he grinned, his eyes full of war. I don't know, I'll beat you up anyway. Come on, continue. Luoka gritted his teeth, pulled out his short sword from his waist, and rushed forward again with the remaining gods. But this time, Ma Chao finally opened up, and the heat flow inside his body was like a flood that had opened up, constantly rushing out. He punched a divine chest plaque with bare hands, and then flew one elbow one more time, moving as fast as a wild beast, not like a country boy who had never practiced. Bang! 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 With a few sounds, more than 10 gods were all knocked down, lying on the ground and humming, and even the strength to get up was gone. Luoka was also kicked over by Ma Chao, and his iron mask was cracked, revealing a face full of blood, and there was finally a fear in his eyes. You are a monster. Luoka shivered and wanted to run away, but Ma Chao gave him no chance. He lifted a knife on the ground and pushed it over in a few steps, and the tip of the knife directly pressed against his neck. Say, who has the temple scent? I'm so honest, otherwise I'll kill you now. Ma Chao's eyes narrowed, his voice as cold as ice. Roke swears and said tremblingly, God. The temple has sent stronger pursuers. It is led by Lord Yang Ming, you can't escape. He is the #1 battle under the gods, and mortals are not opponents at all. Yang Ming? Ma Chao had a snake. He had never heard of this name, but as soon as he heard the first war will be, he knew in his heart that this guy would definitely not be easy to mess with. He snorted coldly, and hit Rock's back hard on the back of his sword, knocking the person directly over, then turned to look at Xiaorolin. Old, what happened to me just now? Why is this power getting stronger and stronger? Ma Chao wiped his sweat and looked confused. Thank you. Roland walked over, lifted up a broken iron on the ground, looked at it, and said lightly, the power of the fighting soul has begun to wake up. You are a good boy, and you can find a way out by yourself in the battle. But don't be proud, this is the beginning. Yang Ming is not comparable to these scoundrels. He comes, you can't see how capable you are. Ma Chao curled his lips. Although he was a little dissatisfied, he also knew that the old man had to be right. He looked down at his hand. The heat was so good that he felt good after using it. After he got it, he looked like he was falling apart. It seemed that he had no control at all. Don't be too slow. Time doesn't wait for anyone. Yang Ming's people are probably coming soon. We have to go deep into the forest to find the Spear of the Sky. Xiaorolin patted Ma Chao on the shoulder and turned around and continued to walk forward. Ma Chao pointed his head and threw the knife away with his hands, gritting his teeth and following. Even though that battle won, he was not at all relaxed. The pursuers in the temple are getting stronger and stronger. He must find the artifact as soon as possible, otherwise he will not be able to save his life if he takes revenge. The two continued to walk deeper into the forest, the air became more and more tight and the trees became denser. The foot was covered with mud and vines, which were sticky when stepped on. After walking for most of the time, Roland suddenly stopped and pointed to the open space in front and said, "Here, this is where the rope is." Ma Chao looked at him and saw a stone platform in the middle of the open space. The stone platform was full of strange runes, and there were a few broken flags on it, which looked a little old. There is a groove in Tai Chung, as if something is missing, and there is a sense of pressure in the air that cannot be described. Is this the hiding place of the Spear of the Sky? Ma Chao looked awkward, and he didn't look like a baby. "Thank you, Roland, the sound is low, it's not wrong, but the artifact will not appear easily. This stone platform is a method of weapon, and you must break the band before you can get the rope. Be careful, the band left by the gods is not simple." Ma Chao slapped his head, but he didn't understand it very much, but he still walked over and approached the stone platform to see a little detail. But the moment he stepped on the edge of the stone platform, the ground suddenly shook, and the runes on the stone platform lit up with dazzling red light. Then, the trees around the open space seemed to be alive, and the branches twisted wildly, turning into whips and whipping towards him. "What's wrong with the trough?" Ma Chao's voice sniffed and retreated tightly, but the trunk was so fast that it was too fast that it sucked at him in the blink of an eye. After a few sounds, there were a few blood marks on his body, which made him suck in his breath. "Don't be upset, this is a god's forbidden system. It will only attract more traps." Roland shouted loudly, took out a yellow paper from his mouth, recited a few words that he couldn't understand, and the yellow paper suddenly became burnt and turned into a golden light and shot towards the stone platform. Strange. The golden light hit the stone platform, and the rune's light instantly weakened a little, and the attack of the branch slowed down. But at this moment, a thread suddenly broke in the center of the stone platform, and a group of black air appeared from the head, turning into a huge shadow. He held a long spear in his hand and stabbed Ma Chao straight towards him. "Boy, hide, that's the guardian spirit of the prohibition." Roland's face changed drastically, and his voice was shattered. But Ma Chao couldn't react at all. Seeing that the long spear was about to pierce his chest, the heat in his brain exploded again. His hands instinctively pushed forward and caught the long spear. The tip of the long spear stopped in his palm, and a sizzling sound came out, like a red iron hitting water, which made him sweat heavily and his legs almost soft. I haven't fallen yet." Ma Chao gritted his teeth and slapped hard, staring at the shadow with his eyes tightly. The power of the soul fighting inside his body rushed wildly. With both hands, the long spear was shattered by him, and the shadow also let out a slight scream, turning into black air and scattering. Bang! Ma Chao couldn't help but kneel on his knees, panting like a dog, his body covered in sweat and blood, and the wolf was so tired. The runes on the stone platform darkened at this time, and a piece of gravel floated up in the groove in the center, with a line engraved on it, like a guide to a certain place. Is this a thread?" Ma Chao gasped, got up with a piercing grout, lifting up gravel, and making his face full of surprise. "Thank you, Roland," after walking over, glanced at the gravel, and said, "It's not wrong, this is the map of the real hiding place of the Spear of Breaking the Sky. But boy, you just resisted the ban and guarded the spirit, and you have already damaged the Yuanqi. Yang Ming's pursuers will arrive at any time. We have to go away, otherwise it will be useless to get the ropes." Ma Chao gritted his teeth, wiped the blood from his face, and grinned, Don't underestimate me, what's the point of this injury? If the temple's dog legs dare to come, I dare to beat them up again. Let's take the way." "Thank you," Roland, without saying much, turned around and walked towards the direction guided by the map. Ma Chao tightened the gravel in his hand, and a fire ignited in his heart. Although he almost ran away, he knew that he was one step closer to becoming stronger. What about the gods? What about the ban? Ma Chao, will break this day long. Ma Chao held the gravel carved with the map and followed Ciarulan to the depths of the ancient forest. The sky became darker and darker, and the smoke in the forest seemed to be as heavy as water, and the road under the foot was getting harder and harder, full of thorns and mud. After stepping on it, I fell into half of the soles of my shoes. The wound on his shoulder was still hurting. The hindrance that just resisted the ban and protected the spirit made him feel sore all over his body, but he gritted his teeth and said nothing, and his brain was full of the shadow of the spear that broke the sky. Old, is this map reliable? We have been walking for a long time, why haven't we reached the place yet? Ma Chao wiped his sweat and couldn't help complaining. Thank you, Rulan, glanced at the lines on the gravel, and his voice was calm. Don't worry, the map guide is right in front. But I remind you that the Spear of the Sky is an ancient artifact, and it will never be easy to get. The gods must have set up a stronger restriction. You kid have just been hurt, so don't show off when you are strong, listen to me and point me. Ma Chao curled his lips, feeling a little dissatisfied, but he also knew that the old man had to be right. He lowered his head and looked at his blood-stained arm. Although the heat flow inside his body was still there, he always felt that it was not as fierce as before, as if he had used the head. He secretly told himself that he would still have to leave some energy when he encounters any danger when he encounters it, and he cannot just get tired of it. After another half an hour, the two finally arrived at the final location of the map mark. In front of me was a huge valley. The mouth of the valley was blocked by vines and huge rocks, and the air was filled with a rotten smell of old, as if something had been in there for hundreds of years. There is a broken stone door in the middle of the valley entrance, with a pile of runes that you can't understand, and red light is scattered. It looks like it is not a good place. Is this the hiding place of the Spear of the Sky? Ma Chao felt that the evil gate here was so deadly. Thank you, Roland. His eyes were solemn. It's true, behind the stone gate is the place where the artifact seal is. However, the restrictions on this gate are not something you can play with, and you will only touch the trap. You have to break the runes first before you can enter. Ma Chao slapped his head, but he didn't understand it very much, but he still walked over and approached the stone gate to see a little detail. But he stretched out his hand, and the runes on the stone gate suddenly lit up a dazzling red light. Then the ground shook, and the entire valley followed, as if something was about to break out of the ground. Back up! Ciarulan shouted loudly and pulled Ma Chao to jump back, but he was still one step late. The stone gate exploded with a turn sound, and a huge monster emerged from the head, 3 floors high, with black pieces, and a brain like a wolf and a bear, with red eyes like blood, and sticky liquid dripping from the mouth, which was obvious that it was not easy to mess with. Candle, what's this thing? Ma Chao was shocked and retreated behind Ciarulan. He casually snatched a branch as a weapon in his hand, his heart beating like a drumbeat. This is the last line of defense left by the gods. Thanks to Roland's face was blue and there was a hint of tightness in his voice. The Spear of the Sky is on the sacrificial priest behind it. If you want to get a magic weapon, you must fuck this guy first. But this thing is not something you can't fight head-on. Listen to my arrangements, we must take it smart. It's a big mistake to get out of wit, this thing is almost trampling me to death. Ma Chao shouted, and the guards roared and rushed over. His huge claws smashed a big tree next to him. He didn't care about wit, so he turned around and ran away, shouting, "Old, think of a way." Thank you, Roland gritted her teeth, took out a handful of yellow paper from her mouth, and quickly recited a few sentences in her mouth. The yellow paper burned up and turned into several golden lights, shooting towards the eyes of the guardian beast. But the golden light hit the tablet like a slap, and it was unreasonable to protect the pressure of the insect. It roared and slapped directly at Ciarulan. Old man. Ma Chao saw that Ciarulan could not hide, and felt relieved. He rushed over and pushed him off, and he was forced to get the claw. His claws hit his back and made a bang sound. He was shot and hit a huge rock. A mouthful of blood was sprayed out of his mouth, and he felt that his 5 internal organs were almost displaced. Boy, are you crazy? Thanks to Roland's face changed drastically and he ran over to help him, but Ma Chao gritted his teeth and pushed him off, wiped the blood from his mouth, and grinned. "Old, I'm fine. I'm handing this guy over to me, don't interfere." "Can you do it? This is not a joke." Roland stomped his feet in a hurry, but Ma Chao couldn't hear it. He lifted a sharp stone on the ground, staring at the guardian's body, and there was only one thought in his brain: do it. The guardian saw Ma Chao dared to stand up and roared, his huge tail whipped like a whip, carrying a broken voice, and was so fast that it was too fast. Ma Chao instinctively slammed and reluctantly hid, but his tail hit the ground, shaking up a smoke, gravel flying, and still scratched his arm, blood flowing out. "Come on, I haven't fallen yet." Ma Chao roared, gritting his teeth in pain, but his eyes were full of war. He felt the heat flow and his body began to rush again, but this time it was different. The heat flow was like a volcanic explosion, instantly sank throughout his body, and every muscle seemed to be ignited, and his power was violently swelling. He even heard a low voice in his brain roaring, "War! Fight! Fight! This is the power of fighting souls." Ma Chao was stunned and immediately ecstatic. He felt that his body was full of strength, as if he could smash the mountain to pieces. He yelled, turned around without retreating, and rushed towards the guardian, and the stone in his hand hit its claws hard. Bang! The stone head was broken into powder, but the claws that guarded the beast were smashed into pieces, making a painful growl. Ma Chao took the opportunity to jump up and kicked it in the brain, kicking it back a few steps, and the ground shook. "Boy, are you completely awake?" Roland was stunned by the sight, looking disbelief. Ma Chao's aura changed completely this time, and his body radiated a faint red light, and his movements were as fast as a flash. Every strike was power to destroy the sky and the earth. How could there be half a little wolf? "Old man, just stop talking, just watch." Ma Chao grinned, and the power of the fighting soul in his body exploded. He could even feel the will of the ancient warrior guiding him and telling him how to fight and kill him. He lifted a broken tree on the ground and used it as a stick. When he pushed it up, he smashed it wildly, and each hit on the guardian piece. Sparks were sparking, and several cracks were smashed. The guardian was furious and roared in Zhang Kai's bloody mouth and bit Ma Chao. Ma Chao didn't hide, holding tight trees in both hands, and forced himself to hold its upper and lower caps. His teeth were only a few inches away from his brain, and his saliva dripped on his face, making people want to vomit. But he didn't retreat, gritted his teeth and sucked hard. His arms' veins swelled up, and the power of the fighting spirit flew wildly, and he forced the guardian's mouth to open. "Go to die!" Ma Chao roared, and with both hands, the guardian was shocked and retreated. Then he jumped up and kicked its brain hard, causing its brain to tilt, hitting directly on the mountain wall next to it, making a huge turn sound, and half of the rocks fell off. The guardian was trying to get up, but Ma Chao didn't give it a chance. He rushed over and grabbed one of its claws with both hands, lifted it up, and then smashed it hard to the ground. Then he punched it several times on its brain. Each of them was like a slaughter, shaking the ground straight. The guardian finally couldn't hold back and let out a silence of wail. The big body fell to the ground, and the red light in the eyes gradually faded. Who? Ma Chao gasped and stood beside the body of the guardian's body. His body was covered in blood and his legs were a little soft, but his eyes were filled with excitement. He turned to look at Thomas, grinned and said, "Old, have you seen it?" "I fucked it." "Thank you." Roland walked over and looked him up and down, with a confused look on his face. "Boy, you are such a monster. The power of the fighting soul is completely awakened. This is much faster than I expected. But don't be proud, this is just the beginning, and the road behind is still long." Ma Chao ignored his worries and turned to the forge behind the guardian. A long spear was inserted into the fort, and its body was dark. The spear was filled with ancient runes, and it was filled with indescribable pressure. As soon as Ma Chao approached, he felt that the power of the fighting soul in his body had a certain kind of co-bearing bird with it, as if he was summoning him. "Is this the spear that breaks the sky?" Ma Chao reached out and held the handle of the spear. As soon as he touched it, a red light suddenly lit up from the long spear, and then a powerful force rushed into his body, as if it was melting with his blood. He pulled it out suddenly, and the long spear was pulled out easily, holding it in his hand heavy, but it had a smooth feel that it could not be described. "It's done!" Ma Chao slapped his long spear, and the air was torn apart. He felt that his combat power had increased several times, and he could cut the rocks with just one blow, which was so cool. "Stop playing. If you take the artifact, you have to go away. Yang Ming's pursuers will arrive at any time," Xiaorulan urged. His face was not very good-looking, as if he had expected something. Ma Chao was about to open his mouth just before he could suddenly hear a rapid sound of footsteps outside the valley, and then several dozen soldiers in black armor rushed in, surrounding the entire valley. These people's enthusiasm is obviously much stronger than Roke before. Everyone is scattered with a strong killing, which is obviously the essence of the temple. "Ma Chao, you can't escape." A rough voice came from behind the crowd, and then a tall figure walked out, wearing golden armor, holding a giant sword in his hand, his face full of scars, his eyes as cold as ice, and it looked like ordinary goods at first glance. "Who are you?" Ma Chao was frowning and holding the spear of the breaking sky in his hand. He guessed that this guy was quite big. The first battle under the god's seat is Yang Ming. The other party spoke coldly, with a loud disdain in his voice. "A mortal dares to challenge the might of the temple if he is snatching his pants? Today, I will take your life." "Yang Ming?" Ma Chao's heart sank. He remembered that Luoke had mentioned this name before and knew that this guy was the strongest battle in the temple, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he grinned. "Okay, I'm worried that no one will try the spear. Come on, let's do it." But as he finished speaking, a shout of killing suddenly came from the other side of the valley. Then a group of people wearing broken armor rushed in, holding various weapons in their hands. Although their atmosphere was not as good as the temple's elite, their eyes were firm, as if they were desperate. The leader was a young woman with short hair and a scar on her face. She held a big knife in her hand. When she came in, she pointed directly at Yang Ming. "The temple doglegs, today we have our Iron Blood Alliance. Don't want to move this kid." "Iron Blood Alliance?" Ma Chao was stunned. He had not heard of this name, but judging from their ambitions, it was obviously coming to help him. He turned to look at Xiaorulan and asked in a low voice, "Old, who is this helper?" "The underground resistance organization is specializing in opposing the temple. I didn't expect that they were nearby," Xiaorulan explained in a low voice, with a flash of relief in his eyes. "With them helping us, we may be able to delay some time." The woman walked over, glanced at Ma Chao, and pointed. "My name is Lin Yu, the deputy leader of the Iron Blood Alliance. I heard that you beat the envoy and fucked Luoke's helping waste. We appreciate your sacrificial pie. Join us, let's deal with Yang Ming together." Without thinking too much, Ma Chao said, "Okay, join hands. Let's kill one of the traits of the temple." Yang Ming sneered, and the pressure did not look at the Iron Blood Alliance. The giant sword slapped and said lightly, "A bunch of sluts dares to shout in front of me? Kill me, don't leave a living." As the voice fell, the temple spirit and the people from the Iron Blood Alliance instantly formed a group. The swords intersected, and the flesh and blood flew. Ma Chao held the spear of breaking the sky and rushed into the battlefield. With a swing of the long spear, he knocked down 3 temple soldiers. The power of the soul and the blessing of the artifact made him feel as if he had entered a state of inhumanity and was killed in great suffocation. Lin Yu's people with the Iron Blood Alliance were not weak, and they cooperated with each other and forced themselves to seize the first wave of the temple's elite. But just when Ma Chao thought he could suppress the other party, Yang Ming took action. He slowly lifted the giant drama, and with a swipe, a golden drama instantly tore through the air, slamming the crowd of the Iron Blood Alliance. Lin Yu reacted the fastest, and he held the knife hard, but the sword directly chopped her knife into 2 pieces. The people were flying with their swords, hitting the mountain wall, spitting out a large mouthful of blood, and were seriously injured on the scene. "Sister Yu." The people of the Iron Blood Alliance were shocked and the soldiers collapsed in an instant. When Ma Chao turned around, his heart sank. Yang Ming rekindled Lin Yu with just one blow. His strength was not of the same level. He gritted his teeth and rushed over, helped Lin Yu up, and asked in a low voice, "How are you? Can you still move?" Lin Yu wiped the blood and gritted her teeth and said, "I can't die. This guy is too strong. You are not a match. Don't fight hard, take my people away." Ma Chao didn't say anything, staring at Yang Ming tightly, and anger ignited in his heart. He knew Lin Yu was right, but how could he bear it when he saw his allies being beaten like this? He held the spear that broke through the sky, and the power of the fighting soul rushed again, ready to fight as hard as possible. "Boy, don't be moved. Yang Ming is not something you can deal with now." "Thank you," Rulin grabbed him and shouted in a low voice, "Stay away the Green Mountains and there is no need to worry about no firewood, withdraw." Ma Chao gritted his teeth and felt unwilling to accept it, but he knew that the old man had to be right. Yang Ming's attack has proved that the gap between him and the other side is not a small 1.5, and the hard fight will only lead to the full army being defeated. He turned his head and looked at Lin Yu and the people from the Iron Blood Alliance, and said in a low voice, "Okay, withdraw. But Yang Ming, I have recorded this account. One day, I want you to kneel down and beg for a favor." Yang Ming sneered, not chasing, but said lightly, "Run, little mess, I will give you time to grow, but don't expect to be overwhelming. Are you able to challenge the will of God?" Ma Chao gritted his teeth and supported Lin Yu. The people in the Iron Blood Alliance rushed out of the valley with Xiaorulin and disappeared deep in the forest. Although he got the spear of the sky and the war was violent, Yang Ming's inverted force was like a mountain pressing his heart, making him unable to breathe. But he was not afraid, but became more and more courageous as he set his back. He secretly swore in his heart that one day, he would step Yang Ming under his feet and smash the shitty power of the temple. Ma Chao took Xiaorulin, Lin Yu and a brother from the Iron Blood Alliance to quietly touch the fortress near the temple while the night was falling. This place is called Haiha Fort, built on the edge of the cliff, surrounded by tens of thousands of feet deep, easy to defend and difficult to attack, and is a key place for the temple to control the edge. Thanks to Roland, the second artifact, the Soul Boulder, is hidden in the core belt of this fortress, saying that this thing can suppress the mind control of the gods and allow mortals to be enslaved. But the problem is that the guards here are very strict, and there must be thousands of soldiers patrolling the rules alone, and there is no mention of the elegance and restriction traps of the temples. "Brother Chao, this place looks like it's not easy to mess with. Can we really force ourselves into it?" Lin Yu's voice was soft, and the scar on her face looked a little bit shady under the moonlight. Since she was seriously injured by Yang Ming in the last time in the valley battle, she has recovered most of her temper, but she has not lost any ruthlessness in her eyes. Ma Chao squatted in the grassland, holding the spear of the sky, staring at the city wall of the fortress far away and the torches coming back to patrol the road, and grinned, hard. "That's not asking for death. We have to rush our brains. Didn't you say that there is a secret passage in the Black Iron Fortress, which can go straight to the inner warehouse? Let's dive in first and find the soul of the town before talking." "Thank you," Rulin, who was on the side, said a low voice. "It's true, the secret passage is the back door left when the fortress was built that year. Not many people should know it now. But I have to remind you that there must be a restriction set by gods in the secret passage. Don't come back after entering and listen to my arrangements. In addition, the soul of the town is in the core sacrificial fortress, and the guardian power will not be weak. You Iron Blood Alliance members must be prepared for tough battles." Lin Yu turned around and glanced at the brothers of the Iron Blood Alliance behind her. These people were all tough traits who survived the last battle. Although the equipment was broken, one's eyes were determined. She said in a low voice, "Don't worry, old man, my people are not afraid of death. As long as you can get a magic weapon and give the temple a heavy punch to the dog-helping thing, it's worth it." Ma Chao patted Lin Yu on the shoulder and grinned, "Okay, this sentence with you will be enough. Brothers, I will tighten my mind when I go to the front. Don't lose the team. Who dares to drag your back? I will deal with him with your hands." The crowd responded in a low voice, and then followed Sierra Roland to the cliff and found a secret crack. The crack was so narrow that it could only pass through the side, and it was pitch black inside, and the wind blew over it, and it smelled like something was hanging underneath. Ma Chao walked in front with the spear of breaking the sky, thanking Roland to follow him. Lin Yu and the people from the Iron Blood Alliance were under pressure, and a group of people came in and touched them carefully. The secret passage was extremely wet, and there were slippery moss under the feet. If you step on it, you would accidentally throw a dog to chew on the mud. After about half a minute of leaving, Sierra Roland suddenly stopped and said in a low voice, "Be careful, there is a prohibited wave in front of you, don't be disturbed." Ma Chao was stunned. When he thought about what was going on, he heard a low buzzing sound coming from the front. Then a pile of red runes lit up on the stone walls on both sides of the secret passage, rolling out like blood, and the air was filled with a sense of pressure. Then, dozens of sharp thorns suddenly popped up from the stone wall, piercing them with broken sounds, and the speed was too fast. "Dog, hide!" Ma Chao roared, and he swung the spear to break the sky suddenly. The long spear slashed with red light and slashed several spears, but it was still one step late. A spear thorn rubbed his arm and made a blood mark, which made him suck in pain. The Iron Blood Alliance brothers behind were unable to react, and two of them were directly pierced through their shoulders. They fell to the ground with a snorkeling sound, and blood flowed all over the ground. "Old, think of a way, how can this thing be broken?" Ma Chao roared, gritted his teeth, and the power of the soul fighting inside his body had begun to move, but he knew that fighting hard was not the way. These restrictions seemed to be gone, and one group of them was stabbed and another group of them came. Thanks to Roland's face, he took out a handful of yellow paper from his mouth, and quickly recited a few sentences in his mouth. The yellow paper burned and turned into a golden light, shooting towards the core of the runes on the stone wall. As soon as the golden light touched the rune, the red light instantly weakened a little, and the spike slowed down, but it still did not stop completely. "Boy, the core of the band is deep in the stone wall. I can't break it with my means alone. You have to use the spear to break the stone wall to destroy the core." Sierra Roland roared anxiously, holding a golden light barrier. Ma Chao was speechless, holding a long spear, and the power of the soul rushed wildly, and the red light on the spear was magnificent. He yelled, and the long spear stabbed hard at the stone wall. The tip of the spear was not directly reached half a meter deep, and a huge shock sound came out. The stone wall cracked in a large thread. The red runes seemed to be torn apart. Finally, they were extinguished and the spear stopped. "It's done!" Ma Chao gasped and wiped his sweat. He turned to look at the injured brothers. Seeing that although they were bleeding a lot, they could still move. He relaxed his voice, "It's okay, right? If you can leave, keep up tightly, don't be too slow." Lin Yu gritted her teeth and helped the two injured men up and said in a low voice, "Brother Chao, we have no problem, continue to leave. What's this little injury? The temple's dogs are waiting for us to clean up." The group continued to move forward, the secret passage became narrower and narrower, and the air became increasingly cramped. After walking for most of the time, they finally saw a faint light coming in front of them. Ma Chao carefully looked out and saw that the exit of the secret passage was in a warehouse inside the fortress. There were several temple soldiers patrolling outside, wearing heavy armor and holding long guns in his hands, which looked difficult to mess with. "Old, what should we do? Or sneak in?" Ma Chao asked in a low voice, his eyes filled with excitement, and his hand holding the spear of the sky was already starting to heat up. "Thank you," Roland's eyebrows, a low voice. "The hard movement is too static, and it will surprise the entire fortress. First sneak in and find the location of the sacrificial place. Lin Yu, after you take the people, Ma Chao and I will open the way and move quickly." Lin Yu pointed at the head and guarded the exit with the people from the Iron Blood Alliance. Ma Chao and Sierra Roland took advantage of the gap between patrol soldiers and sneaked out of the warehouse and hid in a dark corridor. The inside of the Black Iron Fort is like a maze. There is a passage made of stones. There are torches hanging on the wall, making the shadows shaking, and the atmosphere is extremely strange. The sacrificial priest is at the deepest point of the fortress, and there must be a lot of guards. We have to go across the main road and touch it from the side. Roland said in a low voice, pointing to a small path on the right, "Follow me and don't make a sound." Ma Chao pointed his head, held the long spear tightly, and followed the cat with his waist. The two of them were evading several waves of patrols and finally arrived in front of a huge stone temple. There is a sacrificial fortress of more than 10 meters high in the middle of the stone hall. On the sacrificial fortress is a black sacrificial light radiating. There are also a circle of temple elves around it, with more than 30 people. The head of the sacrificial fortress was wearing silver armor and holding a war turret in his hand, and it was obvious that it was a tough straight. "It's that one, the soul of the town." Roland's eyes lit up and he said in a low voice, "But there are too many obstacles and it's impossible to be hard. You have to find a way to lead them." Ma Chao grinned and said in a low voice, "Old, simple, let's be calm and adjust them. I'll go and make trouble. You'll be ready to pick up Lin Yu and the others, let's fight quickly." Before Roland could respond, Ma Chao quietly retreated to the side of the stone hall, lifted up a stone head, and threw it hard towards a corridor far away. With a bang, the stone hit the wall and made a huge sound. The patrol soldier Rima looked up, and the silver-armed warrior who was leading the way growled, "Who is there? Go and take a look." More than a dozen soldiers, Rima, ran towards the sound, and half of the people guarding the fortress were instantly reduced. Ma Chao saw the opportunity to come, thanked Roland for winking, then suddenly shook out, and the spear of the sky broke, and the red light burst out, directly slashing the two closest guards and crashing into the wall and passing by on the scene. "Absolutely. Call the police." The remaining guards shouted, and the weapons were thrust up. The silver-armed warrior even started a war and smashed Ma Chao hard. The head was filled with a broken voice, and his aura was so fierce. "Good come." Ma Chao refused to retreat and the power of the fighting soul rushed wildly. He raised his long spear and forced the battle to slam the war. The two forces collided together, making a loud bang sound, which shocked the ground to break a few tricks. He took advantage of the opportunity to kick the other party in the chest. The silver warrior was kicked and took a few steps back. His face darkened and he roared, "Little miscellaneous, I have 2 chances, but you are dead today." As the voice fell, a golden light suddenly appeared on the silver-armored warrior, and his power surged. The battle swept, bringing out a golden wave, shaking Ma Chao's chest. Ma Chao gritted his teeth, and his long spear thrust 3 times. The red light and the golden light collided, and he forced the air wave to break, but his arms were still numb and he was shocked. Why is this guy so strong? At this moment, thanks to Roland, who brought Lin Yu and the people from the Iron Blood Alliance, slammed Lin Yu with a big sword, cut over the 2 guards with his head, and shouted, "Brother Chao, don't fight. We have a lot of people, so we'll be surrounded and fight." Ma Chao was pointed at the head and changed his strategy. He no longer fought hard with the Silver Warriors, but instead surrounded the people from the Iron Blood Alliance, retreated, and led the other side to the opposite direction of the Sacrificial Supreme. Although the silver-armored warrior was strong, he was short of people. He was soon dragged down by the Iron Blood Alliance's sea of war, and his roar was unable to be wiped out. "Old man, I've handed it to you, get it." Roland didn't say anything, and took advantage of the trouble to rush to the fort and reached out to grab the soul of the town. But as soon as he touched it, a blue light suddenly lit up around the meridian. Then the ground of the fort shook, and 4 stone puppets emerged from the ground, each 3 meters high. He held a giant axe in his hand and mechanically chopped towards Roland. "This set again?" Ma Chao saw the situation and erected the horse. He swung the long spear and shattered the axe of a stone statue, but 3 puppets attacked at the same time. The giant axe smashed the ground straight, and he couldn't hold it any of them. "Brothers, come on, protect the old man." Lin Yu yelled, and came over with the people from the Iron Blood Alliance, and forced himself to fill it with his life to block the attack of the puppet. Although he lost several brothers, Roland finally got the kid and quickly retreated back to Ma Chao's body, and said in a low voice, "It's done, but the kit has a seal, so it won't be used at any time. We have to break the ball first. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and pointed, "Okay, brothers, kill me." The group retreated, rushed out of the stone hall, and ran towards the secret passage. But I didn't run far away, and the entire fortress suddenly heard a harsh warning message, and countless temple soldiers came from all directions, blocking all exits. Ma Chao's heart sank, knowing that the trouble was so great. "Brother Chao, the secret passage has been blocked, we can only force the door." Lin Yu gasped, her face full of blood, but her eyes were still a battle to fight to the end. "If you are hard, you are hard. I'm not afraid of it." Ma Chao gritted his teeth, held the spear of the sky tightly, and rushed towards the front door of the fortress. There were more and more guards along the way, but his soul power exploded. Every time his long spear swung, he took several lives and killed a bloody road. The people of the Iron Blood Alliance were also like crazy. They rushed to the core of the fortress after losing half of their hands, and finally rushed to the core of the fortress, a huge building. There is an energy core in the center of the building, emitting dazzling white light, like the source of power of the entire fortress, and there are hundreds of elite soldiers guarding the road around. Ma Chao knew at a glance that if this thing was destroyed, the fortress's defense system would definitely be invasive, and the chance of sudden outbreak would come. "Brothers, kill that core and we can run." Ma Chao roared and rushed into the guard group. The red light of the spear breaking through the sky burst into pieces. The power of the fighting soul was urged to the extreme. Each blow was like a thunderous slam, slashing a path. Lin Yu and the people from the Iron Blood Alliance followed him and tried their best to cover him up, finally letting him get in front of the core. "Go to die." Ma Chao gritted his teeth, lifted his long spear high, and all the power in his body gathered to the tip of the spear. The red light was as bright as the sun, and then it stabbed hard at the energy core. Room! A huge sound of shocking earth was pierced, and a huge wave of shock waves burst out, blowing up all the guards around them, and the fortress's city walls began to collapse, and the defense system instantly stormed. "It's done! Run!" Ma Chao gasped heavily, covered in blood, but his eyes were full of excitement. The people from the Iron Blood Alliance took advantage of the situation to get out of the fortress and ran wildly along the path beside the cliff, finally leaving the pursuit. But they didn't run far away. A low smile suddenly came from the fortress ruins, and then a tall figure walked out of the smoke, wearing golden war armor and holding a giant sword in his hand. It was Yang Ming. He looked at Ma Chao coldly, and his voice was filled with disdain. "Little miscellaneous, is it you again?" He took the soul bullet and blew up the Black Iron Castle. "It's a big fool. Unfortunately, in my eyes, you are still a slut." Ma Chao's heart sank, holding the long spear tightly, gritted his teeth and said, "Yang Ming, I'm just trying to make a fortune with you. Today, you either die or I die, come on." Yang Ming sneered, and the pressure didn't even take Ma Chao in his eyes. The giant sword slapped it with his hands, and a golden sword tore apart the air and rushed Ma Chao straight into it. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and slapped the spear of breaking the sky with all his might. The red light and the golden light collided, but this time it was not a match. The sword directly shocked him, and the long spear almost wiped out. He fell to the ground and spit out a mouthful of blood. "Brother Super." Lin Yu was shocked and wanted to come up to help, but Yang Ming just let out a blow, and another storm. The people from the Iron Blood Alliance were instantly flying for several times. Lin Yu was also injured again and was unable to lie on the ground and move. "With this ability, can you dare to challenge the temple?" Yang Ming walked over and looked at Ma Chao from a high place, with mocking eyes all over his eyes. "I will give you the chance to grow, but you are still such a waste. Tell you, the power of the gods is something you will never reach. No matter how many artifacts you use, it will not change the fact that you are a fool." Ma Chao gritted his teeth and got up with his teeth. He was covered in blood, but his eyes did not shrink at all. He held the spear of the sky tightly and roared, "Yang Ming, I have remembered your words. One day, I will step you under my feet with my hands, so that you know that mortals can go against the sky. We have not finished this account." Yang Ming laughed and didn't take action anymore, but said lightly, "Okay, I'll wait and see how you are against the will of heaven. But I'll see you next time, it's not so good." After saying that, he turned around and disappeared into the night, as if he was disdainful of killing Ma Chao at all. Ma Chao looked at his back, his fists clenched, and an unprecedented anger and determination ignited in his heart. Although he failed again this time, he was not afraid. He got the soul of the town, the Black Iron Fort was destroyed, and many imprisoned Moro rebels were rescued. These were the first steps to victory. "Brother Chao, we can still fight." Lin Yu got up with a thrust, her voice weak but determined. Although the Iron Blood Alliance brothers next to him were seriously injured, the eyes of those who survived were full of war. Ma Chao was a little bit and grinned, "Of course I can beat him. The temple is a fart, Yang Ming is a fart. Brothers, let's go back to take care of the wound. Come next time and smash their dogs." "Thank you." Rulan walked over, patted Ma Chao on the shoulder, and said in a low voice, "Boy, don't move. Yang Ming's power is far beyond your current limit. The seal of the soul bell has not yet been solved. The next artifact must be found as quickly as possible, otherwise you will never be his opponent." Ma Chao gritted his teeth and pointed, I know. Tell me where to go next." Ma Chao, swear that I will never stop if I don't step on the temple." The group of people supported each other, carrying the soul of the town, and the wounds that filled the body disappeared into the night. They knew that the battle was far away and Yang Ming and the temple were still threatening, but Ma Chao had only one thought in his heart: to become stronger, to take revenge, and to break this sky. The night was as dark as ink. In a secret cave in the wilderness, Ma Chao sat on a flat stone with his knees, and two magical weapons were erected in front of him: the spear of the sky and the soul of the town. The spear that broke the sky was dark, and the spear was full of runes, scattering a cold, killing atmosphere. The ghost light of the town's soul flowed, and the blue light seemed to be able to penetrate the heart. "Thank you." Rulan stood aside, with a serious face, holding a roll of old books in his hand, and chanting some mantras that he couldn't understand in his mouth. "Boy, are you ready? The fusion artifact is not something you can play with. If you are not careful, the power of the soul will retaliate, and your life will be gone." Xia Roland stopped the spell and looked at Ma Chao, with a sense of worry in his eyes. Ma Chao grinned, wiped the sweat from his face, and said indifferently, Don't scare me. From Haishi village to now, I haven't seen any scene. If you backfire, you will be afraid of nothing. If you don't integrate the artifact, how can you fight with Yang Ming's dog things? Our brothers from the Iron Blood Alliance are waiting for us to take them to smash the temple." "Thank you." Roland, and said nothing more, continued to chant the mantra. The air in the cave became more and more stressful, and the light of red and blue intertwined began to appear around the two artifacts, like two forces pulling each other. Ma Chao took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and the power of the fighting soul in his body flowed slowly, trying to establish a connection with the power of the artifact. But as soon as he touched, he felt like his brain was being pricked, gritting his teeth in pain, and sweat beads fell down his head. Hold on, the power of the soul is your foundation. Use your will to guide it and absorb the power of the artifact in. Xia Roland growled, and a golden light suddenly ignited in the ancient book in his hand, as if he had added a layer of protection to Ma Chao. Ma Chao bit his teeth and his brain was full of pictures from small to large. His mother's eyes were bullied by the gods, his screams when the villagers were captured, and his unwilling eyes when the Iron Blood Alliance brothers fell down. These pictures burned his heart like fire, making him withstand the tearing pain. The power of the fighting soul finally became a common wing with the artifact. The killing of the spear of the sky and the pressure of the soul bowl rushed into his body, like two torrents colliding in his blood, which made him almost shout out. "It's done!" Xia Roland suddenly shouted loudly, and Ma Chao suddenly opened his eyes, and a red-blue light burst out from his body. His air stormed, and several cracks were shaken out of the stone walls of the cave. He lowered his head and saw that the spear of the sky had turned into a red light and merged into his right hand, and could tear the air apart with just one blow. The iron of the town turned into a blue light and scattered on his left wrist, implicating a mental wave that could suppress everything. Trouble, this power, is too strong. Ma Chao stood up and punched the stone beside him. The stone bent directly into powder, and the ground was concave. He felt like he had turned into a human-shaped beast, and he could collapse and break the ground at any moment, and he felt very happy. Don't be proud, fusion of the artifact is just the first step. Your fighting spirit power has reached the peak now, but Yang Ming is not an ordinary opponent. The temple has a stronger trump card. Thank you, Rulin, drew up the ancient book, and his voice was low. The people from the Iron Blood Alliance have been assembled, and the mortals from several nearby villages and towns have also responded to the call and are ready to work with us. The time to attack the temple has arrived. Are you ready to prepare? Ma Chao clenched his fists tightly, and a fierce fighting spirit ignited in his eyes. Old man, I have been waiting for this day for too long. The things that helped the dog in the temple have pressed us mortals for hundreds of years. This time, I want them to know who is the real slut. Let's take me to see the brothers. Outside the cave, in the temporary camp of the Iron Blood Alliance, thousands of people have been gathered. Lin Yu stood in front, although the scar on her face was still there and her body was covered with old wounds, but she was not weak at all. She held a newly created big sword in her hand and looked calm. Next to it are mortal rebels from various villages and towns, some old and young, wearing broken clothes and weapons, but they all wrote 3 words, "Don't accept it," on their face. Brother Chao, everyone is here. There are more than 5,000 people in total. Although they are not as good as the elite of the temple, we are very brave and dare to fight to the death. Lin Yu saw Ma Chao walking over, grinning, and a sense of excitement in her voice. Ma Chao jumped onto a big stone, looked at the dense crowd below, and shouted loudly, "Brothers and sisters, we mortals have been under pressure from the temple for hundreds of years, and we live like dogs. If we can't pay taxes, we will die. If our family is caught, we can only endure it. But I tell you that this day is over. Today, we will take back our lives and smash the temple, so that the dog that helps the high places kneel down and bark. Who dares to follow me? Fuck! 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 The crowd below exploded in an instant, with a shocking sound. Numerous people lifted up their weapons, their eyes full of anger and determination. Ma Chao looked at this scene and his heart was filled with blood. He knew that this battle was not only for himself, but also for the respect of all mortals. Discover. Target, the main city of the temple. Ma Chao waved his hand and headed towards the main city of the temple with more than 5,000 people. The mortals in the village along the way heard the news and joined the team. The team became bigger and bigger like a snowball. When they arrived outside the main city of the temple, they had already expanded to nearly 10,000 people, with a huge voice and a huge blow to the sky. The main city of the temple is located at the top of Tianyao Mountain, surrounded by thick white jade city walls. The city wall is engraved with ban runes, flashing with dazzling golden light, which is obviously not easy to mess with. There were thousands of magic weapons at the entrance of the city gate. He was wearing heavy armor and holding long guns in his hand. He was also carrying huge crossbows on the head of the city, and the arrows were aimed at the foot of the mountain and ready to shoot at any time. Ma Chao, you are such a little fellow who dares to die. A familiar voice came from the head of the city, which was Yang Ming. He was wearing golden armor, holding a giant sword in his hand, and looking down at the rebels at the foot of the mountain, his face full of disdain. Just like you, a group of people, and want to challenge the temple? Tell you, don't even want to go down the mountain alive today. Ma Chao sneered and raised his right hand. The red light of the spear of the breaking sky instantly condensed into a body. The tip of the spear pointed directly at Yang Ming. Yang Ming, I have been waiting for this day too long. Last time you let me run away, I will kill you this time. Brothers, please wipe me out and kill this little bitch. Kill! The rebels roared angrily, as if a mountain torrent broke out, and rushed towards the city gate. The divine Lima counterattacked, and the crossbows on the head of the city made a buzzing sound, and countless giant arrows shot down like rain. Each arrow was filled with a broken sound, and when it penetrated into the crowd, it was covered in blood. Although there were many people in the resistance army, the equipment was too poor. It took a few hundred people to fall down shortly after the sturdy armor, and the scene was extremely fierce. This crossbow cannon is too fierce. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and rushed to the front. The spear of the sky broke into pieces, and the red light burst out, slashing out dozens of giant arrows, but he still couldn't hold it all. The brothers next to him fell down, and blood poured on him. His heart sank, knowing that if this continues, his military spirit will collapse. "Brother Chao, let's cover you up and kill that crossbow." Lin Yu came up with a spear of the Iron Blood Alliance. The big knife in her hand had already slashed the blade, full of blood, but her eyes were still a battle to fight to the end. She took the man with a rain of arrows on his back and opened a way for Ma Chao. Several brothers were shot through by giant arrows on the spot, and their voices were filled with sounds. "Sister Yu." Ma Chao's eyes were red, and he bit his teeth tightly. The power of fighting soul in his body exploded to the extreme. The spear that broke the sky was as bright as the sun, and he slashed a bloody path with one blow. He rushed under the city wall, jumped up to the head of the city that was more than 10 meters high, and stabbed the long spear hard at the core of the crossbow. Roll! With a loud blast, the crossbows exploded directly into pieces, and the several magic weapons that operated were blown away, flying flesh and blood. "It's done! Brothers, please!" Ma Chao yelled, and the soldiers who resisted were greatly excited. Taking advantage of the destruction of the crossbows, they rushed towards the city gate. Lin Yu led people to hit the door with a huge tree, and Ma Chao opened the killing ring in the head of the city. Every time the spear of the sky broke away, it took several lives. The gods could not hold it back at all, and fell in pieces, blood flowing into a river. "It's broken!" With a loud noise, the city gate was finally knocked open, and the resistance army rushed into the main city like a tide. The magical plane was instantly dispersed, and there were shouts of killings everywhere on the street. Ma Chao was killed with his head, and with the blessing of the power of the fighting spirit, he was like a killing machine. The spear of the sky broke through all defenses. The blue light of the town's soul bomb suppressed the spirit of the gods, making them react and resilient, and they were not opponents at all. Mortals are awake. When the mortal slaves in the city saw this scene, they threw down the tools in their hands and joined the team of the rebel army. Some even rushed towards the gods with bare hands, and the scene became more and more inconvenient. Mortals felt that the wave of awakening spread across the main city like wildfire, and the temple's stewardship began to move. "Ma Chao, you're looking for death." Yang Ming finally couldn't sit still. He rushed down from the head of the city, and the giant sword blew up, the golden sword tore through the air, and rushed Ma Chao. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and slammed the spear of breaking the sky with all his might. The red light and the golden light collided, and the shock sounded, shaking the ground, and the gods and the rebels beside them were overturned by the waves. "Yang Ming, I won't run away this time." Ma Chao roared, and the power of the fighting soul rushed wildly. The long spear stabbed 10 times, each of which was carrying a force that broke the sky and the earth, and forced Yang Ming's sword to break open. But Yang Ming sneered, golden light stormed, and the giant sword slammed, so fast that the naked eye could not see clearly. He directly slashed on Ma Chao's shoulder, and the blood sprayed out in an instant. "That's all?" Yang Ming snorted disdainfully, and the giant sniper rose again, ready to give Ma Chao a fatal blow. Ma Chao gritted his teeth, and the blue light of the town soul was strong, and he forced Yang Ming to suppress him for a moment. He took the opportunity to take a few steps back, panting heavily, and the wound on his shoulders made him suck in a breath. "Brother Chao, we are here to help you." Lin Yu came up with a few brothers from the Iron Blood Alliance and tried to attack Yang Ming, but Yang Ming just swept them all with his hands. Lin Yu directly hit the wall, spit out a large mouthful of blood, and fainted. The other brothers were even more agitated and were directly slashed into 2.5 by the sword, and blood was scattered all over the floor. "Sister Yu." "Brothers." Ma Chao's eyes instantly turned red, and his brain seemed to explode. The power of the fighting soul was like a wild horse that had been wiped out, and it exploded wildly, and the wounds quickly settled under the red light. He roared, and the power of the Spear of the Sky and the Soul Boy exploded at the same time, and the red and blue light intertwined into a rushing wave that destroyed the sky and earth, and directly rushed Yang Ming away. It's a bit interesting, but it's not enough. Yang Ming sneered, and the giant sneered, resisting the impact, but the ground under his feet was still cracked. After a few steps, his face finally changed. He didn't expect that after Ma Chao merged the artifact, his power could reach this point and threaten him. I said, "One day I will step on you under my feet." Ma Chao gritted his teeth, endured the pain and thrust it up again. He stabbed his long spear, and the red light pointed directly into Yang Ming's chest. With a blow of Yang Ming's giant sword, the blue light of the soul boar exploded at the same time, suppressing his spirit and allowing him to move. The long spear directly pierced his shoulders and blood was sprayed out. Ah! Yang Ming roared angrily, and the giant slammed Ma Chao and flew away, but he himself also stumbled back. The wound on his shoulders continued to flow, and his breath was a little weaker. Ma Chao fell to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and his body seemed to be falling apart, but he still thrust and got up, his eyes full of war. "Yang Ming, aren't you saying that mortals are slacks? How come? Does it hurt you by biting the slacks?" Ma Chao grinned, his face full of blood, but his breath was not weak. Yang Ming gritted his teeth, his face turned blue, and he was obviously angry by Ma Chao. He was about to take action again, but at this time a huge wave suddenly came from the main city, and the sacrificial tower at the core of the temple began to collapse, and countless mortals resisted and rushed in, killing the final defense without leaving any armor. The temple's prohibition runes are extinguished, and the foundation of the treatment is finally shattered. "Diet!" Yang Ming shouted softly, knowing that the big power had gone. He glared at Ma Chao fiercely, "Little mischief, you are leaving this time, but the true power of the god has not yet been shown. We will have a chance in the future." After speaking, he flashed, and withdrew to the back mountain with the remaining gods, disappearing into the night. Ma Chao didn't chase him, and his body was almost exhausted. He knelt on his knees and panted like a dog. Lin Yu was helped up by her brothers. Although she was seriously injured, she still grinned, "Brother Chao, we won." The dog in the temple ran away. Ma Chao pointed at the head, looking at the raging fires ignited in the main city, and the scenes of countless mortals waving their weapons, and their hearts were filled with mixed feelings. In this battle, the resistance army was extremely frustrated, and countless brothers of the Iron Blood Alliance fell, and Lin Yu was almost dead, but they finally broke the final defense line of the temple. The mortals felt that the wave of awakening burst out and could no longer be suppressed. "Thank you," Rulin walked over, patted Ma Chao on the shoulder, and his voice was low, "Boy, you're fucking well, but this is just the beginning. Yang Ming is not dead, and the god is still behind the scenes, and the real battle is not over." Ma Chao gritted his teeth and said, "Old, I know. What about God? I want them to know that mortals can go against the will of heaven. Brothers, let us continue and smash their lair." The voice of the rebel army echoed again, and the sound shook the sky and the mountain. Although it is difficult to win and the price is huge, Ma Chao knows that this is just the first step to freedom. Yang Ming ran away, and the shadow of the god was still there, but there was only one thought in his heart: fight to the end and break this sky. The wind at the top of Tianyao Mountain was as cold as a knife, and it hurt when scraped on the face. Ma Chao dragged his heavy steps and climbed the staircase of the temple step by step. The Spear of the Sky was inserted into the ground as a crutch. Every time he took a step, the wound on his shoulder would burst out blood and drip on the white jade, which made his eyes startle. His face was as white as paper, his body was covered with blood, and his war armor had been extremely broken, but the fire in his eyes was burning better than at any time. Just after the battle in the main city, the rebel army destroyed the temple's defense line and forced Yang Ming to retreat, but Ma Chao knew that this battle was not over. Yang Ming escaped into the forbidden area of the temple, the Tower of Heaven. The true power of the gods is still hidden there. Do not fuck him or smash the tower. The freedom of mortals is just empty words. "Brother Chao, you are so hurt." Don't go alone. Let's go together. Lin Yu's brother carrying the Iron Blood Alliance under the hillside shouted in a voice, his face full of blood and mud. She was just beaten to death by Yang Ming. She was now unable to stand firmly, but she still tried to keep up. Ma Chao turned around, grinned, and his voice was quiet and determined. Sister Yu, this battle is mine. Yang Ming owes me what he owes me and what he owes us mortals. I have to tell you back with your hands. You are guarding below, don't let the soldiers of the temple run away, wait for me to come back. After speaking, he didn't take a look, turned around and continued to walk up, his back alone and full of determination. Xia Rulin stood beside Lin Yu, leaning on a crutch, staring at Ma Chao's far-off back with a brow, and said in a low voice, "This kid is as stubborn as a cow. However, only he can get to this point. The blood of the soul, a destiny hero, may really be able to create miracles." The Tower of Heaven at the top of the mountain stands in the clouds, as high as if it can penetrate the sky. The tower body is made of pure white divine stones, with golden runes on the surface, emitting dazzling light, and a sense of pressure that makes people breathless. Ma Chao walked to the tower and looked up. A tall figure stood at the entrance of the tower gate. The golden war armor flashed with cold light under the sun. He held the familiar giant sword in his hand. It was Yang Ming. The scar on his face became deeper, and the wound on his shoulder was still bleeding, but his breath was not weak, and his eyes were filled with a high indifference. "Ma Chao, you are so terrible." Yang Ming sneered, and the sound of sand rubbing like sandpaper. "I thought you would carry that helper to go with you, but I didn't expect you to be the only one. Why, is it so urgent to die?" Ma Chao didn't say anything, holding the spear of the sky, gritted his teeth and stood up straight, staring at Yang Ming. "Yang Ming, I have been beaten and bleeding from Haishi village to this day. I have been worshipped by your temple. Today, either you die or I die. Don't say a word, just do it." Yang Ming laughed, and the giant sword slammed the air with his hands. The golden sword ripped through the air and rushed Ma Chao. "Okay, I will fulfill you. But tell you that the Tower of Heaven is the embodiment of the will of the gods. If you come in, you will only die even more." Ma Chao gritted his teeth, and the power of the fighting spirit inside his body rushed wildly. The red light of the spear that broke through the sky burst out, slashing the sword, but the impact force still shocked him to take a few steps back, and the wound broke again, and blood flowed all over the ground. He gasped, and knew in his heart that the battle in the main city had consumed most of his strength, and now he was not Yang Ming's opponent in a tough battle. But he did not retreat, his brain was full of Mother's eyes, the villagers' screams, and the eyes of the brothers of the Iron Blood Alliance when they fell down. These pictures burned him like fire, making him stand firm and calm down. "With this ability, do you still want to go against the will of heaven?" Yang Ming snorted disdainfully. The giant sword was tall and golden, and its air was storming. It seemed to have received some kind of blessing. Then the sword slashed down hard, and the air turned into a golden dragon, roaring and slamming towards Ma Chao, his head as if it was about to tear everything apart. Ma Chao saw that he could not hide, and the blue light of the town's soul exploded instantly, suppressing Yang Ming's spirit and causing his movements to slam. Then the spear of breaking the sky was stabbed with all his strength, and the red light and the golden dragon collided, causing a huge turn shock, which made the entire mountain go dirty. Ma Chao was blown away by the waves and fell to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and his body seemed to be falling apart, but he still gritted his teeth and got up, inserted his long spear into the ground, and he held it hard and didn't fall down. "Yang Ming, I'm not dead yet." Ma Chao roared, and the sound was full of anger. The power of the fighting soul was urged to the extreme, and even began to burn blood. It seemed that there was a group of fire in his body. The pain made every piece of his muscles tremble, but his power surged to a terrifying level. His eyes turned red and his body radiated the light of red and blue wombs, as if the gods of ancient wars were descending, and their aura was approaching Yang Ming. Yang Ming's face finally changed, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Burning blood? You're crazy. This will make you lose all your life, and you still want to fight with me?" "Fight? I want your life." Ma Chao roared, and without regard for everything, the spear of the sky pierced 10 times, each of which was carrying the atmosphere of destroying the sky and the earth. The red light flooded Yang Ming's breath like a flood, forcing him to take a few steps back. The blue light of the town soul bomb exploded at the same time, constantly suppressing Yang Ming's spirit, making his reaction slower and slower, and the gap between the giant storm became bigger and bigger. Die it! Yang Ming roared, and the giant slapped, forcibly snatching Ma Chao's long spear, but his shoulder was pierced again and the blood was sprayed out. He gritted his teeth, and the golden light suddenly burst out on his body. The runes of the Tower of Heaven seemed to feel something. The chi lit up, and a terrifying force descended from the top of the tower and poured into his body. The wound actually began to reconcile quickly, and his aura rose again. The power of the gods? Ma Chao gritted his teeth and his heart sank. He knew that this was the trump card of the temple, but he did not retreat at all. The pain of burning blood made his mind blur, but the power of the soul was like a wild horse that had been wiped out, and it exploded wildly. He roared, and the power of the spear of the sky and the soul boy gathered together, turning into a red-blue striking wave, directly hitting Yang Ming's chest. Strange. The golden light of the rushing wave collided with Yang Ming, and a huge shock to the earth. The stones on the top of the mountain were shattered, and the clouds were scattered, revealing the full picture of the Tower of Heaven. Yang Ming was shocked and took a step back more than 10 steps, a mouthful of blood was leaking from his mouth, and his armor was cracked, and his face was full of disbelief. How could you have this power? Because I am immortal. Ma Chao gritted his teeth, and his voice was full of strength. Your temple treats us as a warning, but I tell you that a warning can kill you, even a warning. After speaking, he did not take into account the consequences of the burning blood, and thrust his long spear hard at Yang Ming's heart. The red light was as bright as the sun, making people unable to open their eyes. Yang Ming wanted to slap, but the pressure of the soul boy made him slow down. The long spear directly pierced his chest, and the blood sprayed Ma Chao all over. He lowered his head and looked at the wound on his chest, and his eyes finally felt fear, and his voice trembled. No. I can't, I am a god and I will, how can I? Go to die. Ma Chao roared, and the long spear twisted suddenly. Yang Ming's chest was torn a big hole, his heart was broken, and his whole person fell to the ground. His eyes were slight, his face full of unwillingness, but his breath had finally stopped. The first battle under the throne of the gods was about to be fucked by a mortal. Who? Ma Chao gasped and knelt on his knees, his long spear pressed against the ground, his body covered with blood. The ignition of blood dying made his eyes dark and he almost fainted. But he gritted his teeth and held back, turned to look at the Tower of Heaven, and a last fire ignited in his eyes. It's not over yet. The dog thing in the temple, I'm going to smash your nest into a thin place. He stood up and dragged the spear to break the sky, and walked step by step into the Tower of Heaven. The tower was empty and there was only a huge golden sacrificial in the center. A transparent crystal ball floated on it, and countless lights flowed in it, like the will of the gods, emitting a terrifying sense of pressure. As soon as Ma Chao approached, he felt like his brain was being stabbed, and the blue light of the soul boar was suppressed and almost extinguished. Mortal, you dare to step into the divine realm. A low voice came from the crystal ball, as if it had descended from the 9 heavens, full of majesty. You think that killing Yang Ming can challenge our rule? The slap is ultimately the slap. Your life is here today. Small talk. Ma Chao gritted his teeth and resisted the mental pressure. The power of the fighting spirit exploded again. The spear of the sky broke up high, and the red light seemed to burn everything. You gods have suppressed mortals for hundreds of years. Today, I will let you know what it means to go against the sky. After speaking, he didn't care about everything and stabbed the crystal ball. The tip of the long spear collided with the crystal ball, and a huge turn sound was released. The runes in the tower exploded, like the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Ah! A squeak came from the crystal ball, as if the will of the god was collapsing. Numerous light spots scattered, turning into waves of shock, which shocked Ma Chao to retreat a few steps and spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. But he didn't stop, gritted his teeth and stabbed it again. The blue light of the town's soul exploded, suppressing the crystal ball's resistance. The spear of the sky hit, and finally stabbed the crystal ball full of cracks. "Mortal, you will regret." The sound in the crystal ball became weaker and weaker, and finally exploded in the last blow, turning into a group of light and dissipating. All the runes of the Tower of Heaven were extinguished, and the urgency disappeared in an instant, and the entire tower began to shake violently, as if it was about to collapse at any time. "It's done." Ma Chao gasped and sat on the ground, not having enough flesh. The consequences of the blood burning made his mind blurrier, but there was still a smile on the corner of his mouth. He knew that the core of the temple was destroyed, the rule of the gods collapsed, and mortals finally became free. Rumor. The Tower of Heaven began to collapse, and the huge rock smashed down from the top. Ma Chao gritted his teeth, dragged his severely injured body, and stumbled out of the tower door. Before he ran far away, the entire tower collapsed and turned into a pile of ruins, with soil flying, covering the sky and the sun. Brother Super. Lin Yu and the Iron Blood Alliance brothers under the mountain saw this scene and rushed up. Xia Ruolin was also using a crutch, and his face was filled with excitement. When they reached Ma Chao's side, he had already fallen to the ground, his body covered in blood, and his breath was so weak that he could hardly hear it. "Boy, you've really done it." Xia Ruolin squatted down and checked Ma Chao's injuries. There was a choking sound in his voice. "The blood burned too much, which damaged the foundation, but you are still alive." "What a monster." Ma Chao opened his eyes tightly, grinned, his voice as weak as a mosquito. "Old, don't say goodbye to me, Yang Ming is dead, and the temple collapses. Let's win, Mom and the people in the village can live a good life." Lin Yu's eyes were red and she gritted her teeth and said, "Brother Chao, I won." All the mortals woke up, and the dogs in the temple could no longer suppress us. "You are a hero, a real hero." Ma Chao heard it, and the smile on his lips became even more intense. Then he closed his eyes, as if he had removed all the removables. "Thank you." Ruolin gritted her teeth, took out a black elixir from it, and forced it into Ma Chao's mouth, and said in a low voice, "Don't sleep, boy, this is my last trump card, which can hold your life. Mortals still need you, you can't fall down." The elixir melted in his mouth, and a warm current penetrated into Ma Chao's body. Although it could not completely cure the injury, it at least made him feel a little clearer. He opened his eyes quietly, looked at the concerned eyes of the brothers around him, and felt warm in his heart, and said in a low voice, "Okay. I won't fall. We still have to rebuild our home." A few days later, in the ruins at the foot of Tianyao Mountain, mortals began to rebuild their homes. The temple's rule has finally become the past. The mortals felt that the wave of awakening spread throughout the mainland, and countless villages and towns walked out of slavery and started a new life. Although Ma Chao was not injured, he still stood on a high slope with a spear of breaking the sky, looking at the hot scene below, and a long-lost smile appeared on his face. Thanks to Ruolin, who walked over, leaned on a crutch, said, "Boy, your blood is the inheritance of the ancient war spirit, and I must protect the mortal world. Although the gods are beaten, there may still remain somewhere. However, as long as you are still there, mortals will not be lowered." Ma Chao pointed his head a little, holding a long spear, his eyes fixed. "Old, I know. If the gods dare to come again, I can fight again. But now, we have to build our home first so that everyone can live a good life." Lin Yu walked over with her brothers from the Iron Blood Alliance. Although she was injured, her face was full of smiles. She patted Ma Chao on the shoulder and grinned, "Brother Chao, we hear you. From today on, you are the leader of mortals and the hero of fate, and will lead us to a new life." Ma Chao smiled and didn't refuse. He knew that although the battle was over, his mission was not over yet. He wanted to lead mortals to rebuild his home, so that everyone could live with their waists straight, and make the shadow of the temple everlasting. As the sun sets west, the new village at the foot of Tianli Mountain begins to take shape, and the children's laughter reverberates in the fields. Ma Chao stood on the high slope and watched all this, and finally felt at ease in his heart. Behind him, the light of the spear of the sky and the bell of the town was flowing slowly, as if complaining about the hope of the future. From the firewood-chopping boy in Blackstone Village to the destined hero who challenged the gods, Ma Chao proved with blood and fire that mortals can go against the will of heaven. He knew that this land belonged to mortals from this, and that he would forever protect this free home.